Welcome to Growing Ecommerce. I'm your host, Mike Ryan of Smarter Ecommerce, also known as SMEC. In this episode, I was lucky enough to speak with Max Hallerstede, CEO of Hallerstede GmbH, or GmbH. That's a long-running family business in Germany, which Max helped bring online under the e-commerce trading brand Kofferworld. And Kofferworld translates roughly to suitcase world or luggage world. So what makes this interview so special is that Max is a real pro in logistics, purchasing, and pricing. He talks to us about how years of consultancy helped prepare him for the disruptions of the last couple of years, and how these strong and really well-deserved relationships with his brands and vendors have secured his business against new competitors. And we also discuss how he's used forecasting and endurance, really, to avoid losses and make profitable sales. We discuss pricing a lot too, and it's just a really great chance to reflect and learn, particularly, I would say, in the current inflationary climate with e-commerce under pressure and everything else that's going on right now. All right, let's get into it. So Max, thanks so much for joining us today. Maybe you can get us started. Just tell us a bit about yourself. What are you doing for a living? And what kind of themes interest you? So what are your responsibilities, and what is the stuff that you really enjoy about that?
Thanks for the invitation to your podcast. My name is Max Hallerstede. I'm the CEO of the company Hallerstede and Kofferworld. Hallerstede is the stationery company with 4 shops, and Kofferworld is our online shop part. I've been in the business now from 2018 on, and in fact, it's a family company. We are not that big. We have like 45 employees. And so as a CEO, you are responsible nearly for everything. You do whatever is important on that day. Some days it can be that I'm with our logistics people together, like on Black Friday, when it's too busy that they can do it on their own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's not just a family business. If it's in its 6th generation, is that right?
Yes, we are in the 6th generation. Hallerstede is founded in 1852 in Oldenburg, and family business always means several generations. And yeah, we are happy with that, that it increased all the time due to different crises like the 2 world wars, and in the last years, the Corona crisis.
Yeah, that's a lot to go through. And, so I'm originally from the US, and so speaking from that perspective, 6 generations is a long time, and because I think we have a lot of younger businesses and some old ones too, but it's been in the family the whole time, and this level of continuity, I think that's just amazing. So really cool. It's almost like a vocation at a certain point. That's great. But we're talking about really like the 1st or 2nd generation that Hallerstede and Kofferworld, and your whole assortment of brands with suitcases and luggage and backpacks and all kinds of stuff here, leather goods as well. We're talking about the 1st generation, really, where it's moved from just those 4 physical stores to the whole digital world as well. Can you talk to us about the transformation and your involvement there? What has that meant for the business?
Yeah, sure. In fact, we started from goods for horses, and my grandfather originally also worked for the British Royals. He was there and made I don't know the English word, saddles for the horses.
Yeah, saddles.
He delivered the saddles. He delivered. So that is the origin of the company. Then it developed over suitcases and handbags. And about 14 years ago, we started our online business, Kofferworld. Originally, we started it with 2 other companies from our business together. And after 1.5 years, we decided together that 3 CEOs is a bit too much. So we bought Kofferworld that day, and now for 12.5 years we do it on our own. And we always keep in mind that it has to be one big company, although the problems or the goals that you have to reach are completely different between online and offline. But our big advantage is that we do it all from one point. So the storage and the offline and online company are in the same building. So they have the benefit that they can use the same storage, and offline has a bigger storage than if they would be on a different place.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, I think you often hear about these online pure players and these kind of disruptive or new direct-to-consumer companies that come out and so on, and then you'll hear about like legacy brands or topics like this, and there's really extent to which Hallerstede is this truly legacy entity in the most positive sense of the word, with all these generations of experience behind it, and then Kofferworld is this newer, fascinating and modern layer that's built on top of that. So are there other kinds of advantages that you see from having this heritage and this legacy behind you, or are there ways in which that has anchored you or challenged you or been a pitfall?
In fact, we think that offline and online need to be next to each other as same partners, because for example, we invested in the offline business in 2019 a huge amount to increase our visibility and be not only for Oldenburg a good company, but in the whole area, and be one big player in the market, to show we are in a small town with 170,000 people, but nevertheless, we want to use our nice shop that people from the whole area come to us. And this point of view, what we created in the offline market, helps us to get suppliers which are high class. And the experience we have and the ideas in the offline market, we want to transfer to the online market and create a good service level for the customers, so that in comparison to some pure players online, we also do the training for our online employees for the brands, so that they know about the things they sell, and that they can explain to the customers which leather it is, or what is the advantage of one suitcase to the next. And we think that this service idea is important for the future. Price is important, yes, but a lot of companies want that their brand doesn't get damaged by too much pricing online. So they think that it's better to have good players who have a high service level, and then you can sell without discount if you give the customer the experience and the idea and the service around the buy, not only offline but also online.
Yeah, that's such a great point. Those vendor or brand relationships are so key, and then you get that kind of, when you treat them in the way that they want, and they're confident that their brand is going to be reflected in a way that as if it would be out of their own hands, then it's such an asset because of the kind of access that you have, and these exclusives, and potentially also on the purchase price side, and all these kind of knock-on effects. Those relationships are so important. Thanks for sharing about that. I want to get back to this pricing topic later in some more detail, but before we move on to that, just want to ask you a couple more questions about your career so far and your background. So while you've been CEO of Kofferworld and Hallerstede for a while now, and it's not the only thing that you've worked on. I noticed I was spying on you a little bit, and dug up your master's thesis from way back when, and that was about KPIs in logistics. And I understand that you've done about 6 years, if I'm not mistaken, of consulting. And logistics and supply have been key to the consulting that you've done. Could you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, for sure. As I was a student, I worked for TESA from Tesafilm as a student, and there I wrote my thesis about the KPIs of their storages in Europe. So we thought about harmonizing of all the KPIs, and we were thinking which are the best. So we discussed it quite a long time. So I wrote about it about 6 months and had a huge insight to the different logistics centers. And after that, I went on to the consulting part. There I was in a company who was focused on KPIs, so reporting and especially planning. The reporting was like, we need the numbers to do a good planning, but planning was the focus. And there we did like HR planning, sales planning, supply chain planning, so that you automate, that you try to find a good way that the employee doesn't have to search which product needs to be resold by the supplier. But the program tells you, look at these 10 products today because of lead time, minimum order quantities, and minimum stock. And I did this for 6 years, about 50 different projects in Germany, with different size of companies, from very big companies like Olympus, Europe, where I did the financial planning, but also cool companies like Polo Motorrad, where I did the supply chain planning and a huge reporting project. So I had various insights about the problems different companies have at sales planning, forecasting, and getting the right product into the right offline point of sale. And this is a huge advantage for my work today, because I now use the tool for my own every day. In the morning, I start and look what happened the last day, and where do I have to see forecast, some sellouts, and get in contact with the suppliers to get a restock. Especially at the moment where the supply chains are quite a mess. Since September last year. It's very important to see where there is something starting on, and to see it very, very early.
Yeah, well, I definitely wanted to ask you about that as well. I mean, this is so interesting. First, I just want to ask you about this tool. So is this something proprietary that you built over the course of those years consulting, or what are we talking about with the tool there?
It's the tool board. It's a company from Switzerland, and the consulting company where I worked, which is named Calver, supports different BI tools and other tools. So my part was with board planning and reporting, and in the background the normal Microsoft SQL server for the data quality, which is in every company a bit of a problem.
Yeah, some things never change, or so it seems. And other things change a lot, like supply chain lately. So just maybe you could just tell us, like, in the space that you're in with luggage, suitcases, products like this. I'm not really aware. Where is that stuff typically manufactured? Is a lot of it coming from China? Is a lot of it manufactured here in Europe, or what's the situation there?
In fact, the production is from China over Vietnam, sometimes Portugal, Italy, or a bit of it in Germany. But if a lot of companies who produce in Germany also have to get some spare parts from Far East. So
sure.
The supply chains were huge problems for nearly all of our suppliers. There were just 10% who didn't have problems.
Okay.
And especially for luggage, it was a huge problem because of the higher prices for containers, and also for the small amount of containers who were available. So that sometimes, or at some time in the last year, in September, I ordered luggage from September last year throughout the time till March this year. Wow. Normally you order it for 4 weeks, maybe sometimes for 2 weeks. And at that point where you didn't have any idea how the luggage will increase due to Corona, last year it was still very difficult. You had to get forecast for nearly 6 months. So it was like, but in fact, it helped us a lot that we did this forecast. And at the moment, we are very happy that we did it that time, because our stock was very good in April and March. And at that time, there was no possibility to get luggage from most of the suppliers from stock. So we had it already and could sell it, but other companies who didn't forecast it in September, October last year had huge problems that their stock were empty.
Yeah, dealing with these long-term stockouts and the missed revenue there, and customer experience, is all kinds of blowback there. So that's a huge competitive advantage, and congrats on managing it so well, because it's been challenging for everybody, I think. Well, that's really cool. Let's return to that pricing topic that we kind of teased or got hinted earlier. What are some of the characteristics of pricing in the luggage sector? Are there a lot of brand enforced prices, or if you got some good freedom? You were mentioning that the brands appreciate when you can sell at their desired price, of course. But yeah, just talk me through there. What are some of the consumer expectations online versus offline? What are the factors that you see a lot?
In fact, the last 2 years were very different in the strategies, you can see, because in the beginning of Corona pandemic, we saw that a lot of companies were struggling with the problems, and a lot of companies who didn't go online by then started online and didn't have a clue about the costs online have, like logistics costs, picking costs, sales costs, marketing costs, and so on. So they sold the articles to prices who were below of the own cost. So there was a time where you said, okay, we don't sell it to the price, we keep it on stock and wait. And that was like half a year nearly. And in some parts, it came again, like in the lockdown in the beginning of 2021 in Germany. we had this situation again that a lot of companies sold to prices where you say, okay, they can't earn anything. It just needs to be, I need cash.
Yeah.
And these were especially players who didn't have any longer experience in online business. So at that part, you couldn't use your normal strategies that you had. You had to see what is happening in the market and had to think about what do I want to do with it, and how is the situation in supply chain, which was combined to that. How is it going on? And at that part, we often decided, okay, we just step back and say we keep it in stock because there's no more, for example, luggage or handbags. There's no stock at the supplier, so the rest of the other companies sell to a price which is not good, and we wait until they are sold out and keep it to a higher price.
Yeah.
And after this got to a normal level, we thought about how to go on with the strategy. So in the beginning of 2021, we decided that we want to introduce a pricing engine. Mm-hmm. In that context, we were looking at the market, what is possible, which tools are on the market, and then we decided to work together with Mac and went into the beta test with the team of Mac and started the pricing engine in beginning of November 21. Mm-hmm. And for us, it was a huge advantage because we have about 3,000 to 4,000 SKUs, which needs to be checked regularly. Beforehand, we managed to check these articles like once in a month, because to check 4,000 articles or SKUs, it's difficult. Yeah. It's a lot of time. And now the pricing engine checks these articles every day. And we are happy about it because our margin improved. Normally you would think the margin goes down because the pricing engine is reacting to other companies, but especially in the last month where the supply chain was a huge problem in the whole market, a lot of companies got sold out, and then the prices could increase again. Yeah. So the pricing engine, from our point, is not meant to get the price always lower. That's why we also try to stop some campaigns at some point, keep it offline for like a week, and then take it online again to see whether the price increase again. And in fact, the market is completely different in the various brands and the various products. In some parts, we have like 3 or 4 competitors. In some parts, we have like 40, 50, 60 competitors. So you have to see what's better for you and where you can get a margin where you want to sell the product. And that's what we keep in focus the last 2 years, that we don't want to make a sale, but to make a margin. And that's why we kept concentrating on some brands and not increase the list of brands by hundreds, for example. Some other market players like take every brand that they can get and put it online because they say more brands are better. In fact, we think the right brands are better.
Yeah. Wow, that's such a cool story. Thank you for sharing that. I mean, Yeah, I love what you've said here. This idea of kind of holding your breath longer than these competitors can, because they're not in that position. They don't have that kind of strategy in place. They don't have all the pieces operationally in place where you can say no to chasing that short-term revenue and wait till the time is right to really collect on the profit that you want and that you kind of earned or deserve with a strategy like this. So that's super cool. And to the point you said that pricing, in the end we're talking about dynamic pricing here, that it shouldn't always just be lower, or just chasing this race to the bottom, the cheapest competitor who frankly might not even be running a valid business model, but that you can actually have margin-based pricing strategies. I think that's super important. Generally, I've talked on this podcast a couple times about the importance of moving a bit away from revenue and really thinking about profitability and operational efficacy. And I think that these lessons are more important than ever in the disruptive times that we faced. And yeah, there was this boom in e-commerce, but now we're facing inflation, we're facing all kinds of uncertainty ahead. There's war in Europe, and a lot of sales have returned offline, so this artificially high online penetration is going back to normal. And I think it's really, really interesting and important what you've shared there. And I want to ask you, so like Google has this new technology out. I think it's in a beta phase right now. And I guess what I find concerning about it, earlier in the beta, it was called dynamic repricing or something like that. And now they're calling it automated discounting. And I feel like the name there tells you everything you need to know. I mean, yeah, behind the scenes, I believe you can set in some margin stops and stuff like this, but this idea that it's just about discounting, and I guess what I find fascinating about this technology from Google and potentially concerning is that it integrates well with Shopify shops. Of course, there's a lot, and WooCommerce and some other. So there's a lot of the market out there where it's basically quite plug and play for them. There's not a lot of technical integration because that's handled by the shop system, by Shopify. And I wonder if all those Shopify shops are adopting this technology, if it might not kind of accelerate that race to the bottom potentially, or kind of enforce or require in a way that other companies are getting. I think it's great if other companies get serious about repricing, dynamic pricing, but I'm just wondering, when I hear that automated discounting rolled out at scale, it's slightly concerning to me. What do you think about that?
In fact, we had a look which tools are on the market last year, and tried to get an idea what we need. And we noticed that although we have an idea of KPIs and planning, and my wife, which is also in the business, is also a consulting or has a consulting background, so we could discuss the right tools on a high level. And I think what I heard about Shopify is a lot of companies who don't have the online experience started with this part of webshop, because it is a bit more like a toolbox and not that individually like Magento, which we use.
Okay.
And in that part, I think for companies who don't want to go into too much detail with the pricing engine, this could be a good idea. But in fact, we decided for the possibility of SMAC, especially because we can create rules by the logic that we want. Because we want not only to have like, okay, I want to be on place 1 and make a maximum discount of 15%, but we want to do more. We want to be more in detail. and take more logic into consideration, like how high is our stock. If the stock is very high, the discount can be higher. If the stock is getting lower, the discount should be lower.
Mhm.
Or, for example, how old is the SKU to see that older ones, which are not never out of stock, should have a higher discount.
Mhm.
And Google has a huge amount of data. You shouldn't keep that, or you should keep that into consideration. That's the advantage of Google, which you can't deny. But the general tool which you have in, like, for our market, for example, if 30 or 40 companies have the same tool, it's getting difficult. Because the tool knows the tool, and then what is the tool doing? That's why we also looked, when we decided for a tool, which competitors have the same tool as we have. And try to figure out what happens if another competitor also decides for Smack. How does the tool work, and what can we do in the tool to be better if another company? Do we have the possibility to increase it, although it's the same tool? And I think that's important to see which possibility you have to think about what you want to do and have a good idea. Try it and then see, okay, this helps us to have more sales with a solid margin. And in this part, we always keep on discussing and improving the tool. And sometimes it's like you go over the market, the local market, where you buy some fish or some fruits, and see something and say, okay, they are just next to each other. How do they do that? Is it the price or is it service? And sometimes you get some ideas where you think, okay, if we do it like this, what is going on in the pricing engine then? Then we test it for one brand and see, okay, good idea or not so good idea. But as we are so flexible with it to code something in the tool, so for us it's the advantage that the limitation is only our brain, what we can imagine of tools. And that's what I learned due to the time of consulting, that first you should think what is the best way without keeping the tool in consideration, and then see how can I do it with the tool. What do I have to do to get it online? And with the Google tool, where you have this big company who is not that flexible, I think for companies who don't want to do so much, it may be a good idea, but I'm not sure what the prices in the market will do with this tool, and I think we will have to wait and see which impact this tool will have.
Yeah, I think you've touched on some really interesting problems here and dilemmas, like, where there's Google, they've got to produce a tool that is very generalizable, that many businesses can use. And then it might miss that level of customization, or it might not be able to cover edge cases or specific needs. And as you said, Google knows a lot, but there's also, they don't know what they don't know. So if you take, even if you assume that price is considered as a signal to their bidding algorithms, for example, like target ROAS, which I'm not 100% sure if it is a signal there or not, but let's say that it is. It's thinking about things in this narrow per auction basis, which is great in that individual case. It's very real time, it's very informed, but then it's maybe missing the bigger picture, how these things aggregate, how these things come together. It's missing the strategy in the end, and it doesn't know what it doesn't know. It doesn't know your stock level or your sell through rate or how old the product is, the product life cycle. These things that you mentioned, where I think it's so valuable to be able to put advertising pressure and pricing pressure and these different levers that you can pull to increase pressure and sales volume on or decrease on given products, where this product, it's more important and valuable for our business to sell it, and to sell it now and at a given price point and margin, than this other one. And this is the level of control and so on that there's this general problem when we're talking about any technology. Can they deliver that? Can they handle specific use cases or not? And like you said, is everyone in the market adopting it or not? Because then you've lost your differentiation at that point. And what does it even mean anymore to use it, to use something if it's too widely adopted? I think these are really interesting challenges, and thanks for sharing that information with us. I've got you for a bit longer, so while I've got you on the line, I want to ask, what's your take on some recent regulation landing here in Europe, which, I'm wondering if North American or international listeners, to what extent they're even aware of it. I'm wondering even if everyone in Europe is aware of it, or what the situation is here. But it's the so-called omnibus directive. Could you maybe explain to us what is at the heart of this regulation, particularly as it relates to pricing, and what have you done in regards to this regulation?
Yeah, the good omnibus.
Yeah.
we heard about it like 4 weeks before it got a rule. It started on 28th of March this year. And what people are most aware of are changes in pricing. Mm-hmm. But there are also different other things that omnibus is coming around, like warranty information and so on.
Reviews.
But the pricing impact was the biggest. Mm-hmm. When we heard about it, we directly started to see what the impact will be, because the rule which was published was like very, very short, and the information were not clear to my point of view. Yeah. Then we started to get in contact with some colleagues from big companies in Germany, like top 10 online players in Germany. Mm-hmm. So we have from school sometimes ago, we have some connections, and we talked to them the same day, and they said, okay, we took one complete team of 10 people who just do omnibus. Wow. Because they said it's too risky because of the fee if you don't comply with it, of 4% of their yearly sales. So they said, we don't want to pay this fee, and try to figure out what this new law is about. And in fact, you have to keep in mind how to present prices, mm-hmm. and how prices change. And in this point of view, we have to differentiate between different types of prices. You have in Germany, UVP, the normal price of the supplier, which you don't have to use, mm-hmm. but that's the normal price, let's say it like this.
The MSRP in the US, for example, I think it's called something else in the UK, but the suggested retail price.
Yeah, the suggested retail price. Yeah, mm-hmm. Thanks. And you have to call it like this. Yeah. For example, you are not allowed to say 249 euros and then cross it and say now 199 euros. That's mm-hmm. not allowed anymore, unless you say which was the lowest price in the last 30 days. So you need to show a third price in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
But if you say, okay, the 249 euros is the suggested retail price of the supplier, you have to write like suggested retail price after it. Then you are allowed to show a lower price, but you are not allowed to cross it, as we interpret the law. Because then it's not in German you call it Streichpreis in the law, but then it's Preisgegenüberstellung. This is a way we found in this law to say, okay, we can change the prices every day, but we are not, or by what we think about this law, we are not in the position that we need to show the third price, so the lowest price for the last 30 days.
Mm.
But what we also learned about this law is percentage prices, like you show this article is 30% less at the moment. If you show it in the product list, that's problematic. And I saw some bigger companies who changed the 20 or 30% less to just deal. They removed all these percent prices from the product list page, product listing pages.
Mm.
So we will have to see how this law will be made more, or will get more detail from the judges.
Yeah, exactly.
Because there will be some fights
for sure
between companies and lawyers, and then we need to see what the judges say, how to interpret the law.
Yeah, that's exactly that. That's such a challenge, because you can make this really good faith effort to be compliant and take a conservative stance there, but then ultimately, the way these regulations are so often handed down, and we've seen similar things with GDPR, DSGVO, for example, where it's just not that clear, and it kind of needs how it actually gets enforced, or what the final interpretation is, get settled in the courts. And that's a growing pain there for sure. And if there are listeners who are blissfully unaware of, and I don't mean that in a negative way, I mean I think that this regulation was really kind of underhyped compared to something like GDPR. It kind of slipped under the radar a bit from my perspective, and but I think it will take until there's some enforcement efforts or some warnings coming out there. That I mean, I just remember with GDPR, we had a blog article about GDPR compliance back in the days, and it was so interesting to see. We went in our Google Analytics and see the traffic on that just mounting and mounting, but really it spiked on the day before GDPR went into effect, massively spiked the amount of traffic that we got. And that's the way it often is, these kind of last minute implementations. And I've heard it said that, with Google Analytics 4, that's got a sunset date, that the interest level in GA4 implementations will never be higher than the day before Universal Analytics goes away. And it's just the way it is with all these changes. But I really encourage everyone to check out the omnibus regulation, and it is this kind of risk management topic. What is the cost to my business of being compliant in one way or another, and what is the upside and downside of that. So I want to give you the final word here, Max. Is there anything that you'd like to, anyone or any company or anything that you'd like to shout out or promote, or while we've got you on the show?
Yeah, in fact, I think the experience we have with online business for the last 12, 14 years shows that we are looking to the future, not only online, but also offline, due to the rebuilding we did 2019, just before the pandemic.
Good timing.
I think we are trying to do our best to keep the business on track due to the very challenging times. And I'm looking forward what the market will be like in 1 or 2 years, because I think there in our market there will be huge changes, because a lot of companies have owners who are like 65 or nearly 70 years old, and there will be a change. And at the moment, it's not clear whether these will just shut down or some other players will get bigger and buy them. And I think especially in the combination and in the good, in fact, we want to keep it as one big company and keep it not as different companies. I think this is our advantage for the future. Keep in contact with the suppliers, keep the brands up, keep a service level online and offline, and be interesting for bigger brands. For example, we were one of the companies who were allowed to sell Remover for the last 3 years. Now all the companies in Europe are not allowed anymore. So Remover only wants to sell on their own, but in Germany beforehand there were like 550 point of sales, and now in the last 3 years there were only 55 in Germany. So we show that service and quality is our aim, and we want to keep up this service and quality for the future. That's what we are looking for.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense on the business side there, and then it's also reflected in an excellent customer experience, and it's just a total win-win for the end customers on the one hand, for the brands on the other hand, and of course for you supporting that relationship. So thanks so much for sharing all these insights with us today. Really appreciate you taking the time. Also, just a quick note to our listeners that Max is expecting his second child any time now. So really, we didn't know if we would make it through the whole recording or if there would be a phone call. So yeah, thanks again in the circumstances, particularly for joining us.
Thanks a lot for your time, and I was happy to be your guest today.
Thanks for listening to Growing Ecommerce, and if you enjoyed this podcast, please consider sharing it with coworkers, friends, or within your professional network. We really appreciate it. This podcast is produced by Smarter Ecommerce, also known as SMEC. To learn more, visit smarter-ecommerce.com.